Yeah, my question about ethics was, I guess, more pertaining to discerning who has or what has private inner life and can therefore suffer. And wanted to get a perspective on what Michael thought about that. But see, he's sort of thinking in terms of these cognitive light cones, so maybe it has something to do with how big your light cone is. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'd appreciate Bernardo's thoughts about that.
I think the question is critical. If an AI has private conscious inner life, is it ethical to turn it off? Is it ethical to take it out of service? So the question is important. There's another question that is important. Even after we already arrived at a conclusion regarding whether something has private inner life or not, let's assume we concluded it has. There's still another question, which is, what is the capacity for suffering of that form of life, of that form of private inner life? And this may sound too cold-hearted, but I don't think there is an issue with pruning the branches of a tree, because that's equivalent to dismembering a human being, right? Cutting off an arm. But I don't think we can project that onto the tree, because the tree does not have a nervous system like we have. As a matter of fact, if you prune off a branch of a tree and you plant it, in some cases, it grows a new tree. It's a fundamental mechanism for tree growth. Or pruning a hedge makes the hedge stronger. Pruning can be advantageous for the overall health of a plant. So beyond just having the best inference we can make regarding the presence or not of private inner life, we also have to ask ourselves, based on the data we have regarding that form of life, what is its capacity for suffering? And we have to adjust our ethics accordingly. And I don't think this is cold-hearted, because some things that we associate with suffering are built into the fabric of nature. Lions have to kill mammals to survive, and mammals have the whole shebang, the whole central nervous system that can lead to a lot of suffering. I have said this many times. I like to repeat it because it marked me so much. I saw a documentary once in which a pride of lions managed to isolate an adult elephant from the rest of the group. And they brought down that adult elephant and were eating that elephant from the back up, starting from the hind legs up, for 6 hours before the elephant passed out. Passed out, not died, passed out. And that's natural behavior. It's built right into the fabric of nature on this planet. We cannot survive without killing. When we eat vegetables, we kill those vegetables. When we eat mushrooms, we kill those mushrooms. The mushrooms can survive without killing, but they need things to be dead already. So even if it's only natural death, so in the entire dance of the ecosystem, a certain amount of pain and suffering is built right in. So it is not cold-hearted to make calculations based on evidence regarding what is the capacity for suffering of an organism that we have already decided probably has conscious inner life of its own. I don't think there is any escape from that. We have to weigh things in objective, data-driven, practical terms, even if it sounds cold-hearted. And in other instances, the opposite conclusion applies. There are university professors in philosophy of ethics and even metaphysics today earning their salary from our taxpayer money, who are making careers about weighing the ethics of how to deal with AIs in the future. Silicon AIs made out of NVIDIA's graphic processing units. It's a fantastic waste of resources. You're paying people to play with fantasies. I can tell you that I'm 99.99999% sure an AI built of NVIDIA GPUs is not conscious. Now, does consciousness underlie it? Yes, of course it does. Consciousness underlies everything. So by performing any physical action on the world, the inanimate world that surrounds us, we are causing experiential effects somewhere. But now it's a question of scale. If I take a shovel and I move a bunch of sand from one pile to another, I am changing something in the experience of mind of large, because that sand that moves from one pile to another is the image of a mental interference I am applying to the mental inner life of mind at large. But mind at large, its image is the entire universe. So what effect will moving a little shovelful of sand from one pile to another have in the inner life of mind at large? Negligible. It's as if a little Maxwell demon entered your head and kicked a molecule of neurotransmitter while it's passing through a synaptic cleft in one of your billions upon billions of neurons. Will you even register that? Well, strictly speaking, you will, but you'll not have pain. You're not going to suffer. So if we are moving piles of sand, and turning computers on and off, the effect of that, given the immensity of mind at large, is ethically completely acceptable, because it will not have a bearing on the suffering of mind at large. But if that computer has a private inner life of its own, associated only with that little computer and not the rest of the universe, now we have a problem. Now we need to weigh the ethical implications. But I think the answer there is no. GPU-based AIs are not conscious, and there is nothing in the leading edge, state of the art of computer engineering, which I still follow today, even neuromorphic architectures, there is nothing about those that suggests to me that we have to weigh the question more carefully. Could there be, in future generations of AI approaches, could we have to weigh those questions? Yes, we could. But I think that will happen once AI starts becoming moist and warm like biology. That's my impression. And then we will have to weigh those questions. But whenever that happens, if or not that happens, if we find ourselves in a situation where we have to weigh these questions, and I think we should do that in a data-driven and not in a romanticized way.
Thanks. Lisa, feel free to follow up.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I am kind of romantic, and I'm okay with that.
Oh,
I have
I am a romantic. I have a friend who wrote a book describing himself as a romantic reductionist, Christoph Koch. I am a romantic too. But when it comes to this question, I think we have to set our inherent romanticism aside and weigh the question based on data and reason. Otherwise, we can go down a rabbit hole and never emerge back.
Well, I know you can't go for a hike then and not step on a slug or, something. You couldn't function if you were just, at the same time, I think what's different to me is and I hear you talk about nature in a somewhat romantic way, letting nature work through us, pay attention to life. So to me, it feels like inherent in that is that there's a certain reverence almost for nature, as it conducts itself without us interfering with it. So I guess that's my intuition, is sort of extrapolating these exobots. So we're now acting on biology, which he's saying inherently has cognitive capacities that we weren't aware of, creating this disassociated entity that seems to then be able to create its own goals, and move around the petri dish, collecting cells, self-replicating itself. We're doing such a poor job right now in our ethics towards others, as he pointed out, taking small differences to mean that we have no ethical obligations. So I guess my concern is, where are we going to be really careful in our ethics going forward with this capacity that we're now learning we can have? That, I guess that's, yes, I am romantic, but I'm also sort of thinking forward as to when this goes forward, who's going to want to co-opt this technology and use it for what? So.
Yeah, of course, there is a danger to this approach of not romanticizing anything, because you can get lost on abstraction and do horrendous things. Like, I bet with you Putin's mindset right now, while he's sending waves and waves of Russian citizens to die in the front lines in meat wave attacks, his mindset is, well, I'm making these people suffer, but it's for a higher cause. It's for the good of the Russian nation in the future. So this is a form of not romanticizing it and falling straight into the arms of the devil, if you know what I mean. Because you disconnect from the web of empathy, of the web of compassion that keeps us honest and grounded in our actions. One is then edifying geopolitical abstraction to a level much higher than the immediacy and the volume of human suffering. And that's how evil is done. Evil is not sadist. Sadism is a very personal thing. It doesn't work in large volumes. And evil is it's a large volume thing, large numbers of suffering of people. So there is a danger to what I'm saying. But if we become too romantic, we end up being one of those professors who is earning a life doing the ethics of Silicon AI. In other words, doing nothing, just fantasizing nonsense. Or we put ourselves in unnatural situations, bound by unnatural constraints. Like if you romanticize things too much, you may conclude that you will never kill nothing, anything, for whatever reason. Well, that guarantees that you're going to die yourself in a very horrendous manner. You will starve, you die of preventable diseases. So how do we find that balance? And so that's what I mean, that we have to use our objectivity and we have to use data to guide that thinking process, because we can fall off a cliff on either edge by going extreme in either direction. And at the same time, we have to avoid the Putin, Hitler, Stalin error, which is to de-romanticize things so much that you lose compassion and empathy and you become ungrounded, and then you become evil.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. Sorry to be a bit stuck on this, Bernardo and everyone. Hoping more people are curious. I'm just still a bit stuck on this notion that we can build AI or some kind of mechanism at some point in a hypothetical future. And then you kind of said at a passing comment, but I suspect it'll be moist and warm or something. And I don't know if you're joking or you literally think it needs some like water and it needs some like temperature, or yeah, can you just say a few more words? And do you also perceive that there was still a gap between your views, yours and Michael?
Yeah, there was a gap.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like parallel lines that meet at infinity.
Right.
Our views could meet, maybe not at infinity, but I don't think they could meet on short term, given the current status of technology and AI. My allusion to warmth and moist environments is the following. I think even on short term, not only is it possible, but we will succeed in creating artificially private conscious inner life. But it will look like an amoeba rather than a silicon computer. That was my point. Do I think that humans can create life from non-life? In other words, to artificially trigger dissociation in the fabric of nature, create a living organism out of an inanimate substrate. Yes, I don't see any in principle reason why that shouldn't be possible. We haven't succeeded yet. We have come very close. Craig Venter managed to synthesize DNA and replace a cell's natural DNA with the DNA he synthesized in the machine. And then applying an electric shock to that cell continued to live, producing the proteins that came out of that synthesized DNA. The only reason it's not yet a biogenesis is that he started from a living cell. But if we can synthesize a cell based on prime materials, shock it, and it then lives and reproduces, that will be a biogenesis, the rise of life from non-life. In other words, the artificial instigation, the artificial triggering of dissociation in mind at large. I see no reason why that shouldn't be possible. It happened on its own at some point in the past. Maybe it had some intelligence involved in that, like Michael suggested towards the end of his participation. But hey, we are intelligent too. We are inheritors of that intelligence of nature. Why can't we do that? I think we can. But that will be artificial consciousness. It will be the same problem as abiogenesis and the same solution. I don't think silicon computers will ever be there. And look, I never elaborated deeply on this, but there are certain reasons. Michael talks about the biofield, the bioelectric field that maintains the coherence of a living organism. Computers are built exactly to prevent that, that global biofield. We would call that EMI, electromagnetic interference. If that biofield were to have any effect on a computer, we deliberately work to prevent electromagnetic interference. We work to constrain the fringes of the electromagnetic fields where they are created and where they are supposed to traffic. We don't allow those fringes to expand. If they expand, you're a bad engineer. You are not taking care of the signal integrity of your system, of the signal to noise ratio, of EMI. You will not even get FCC certification, by the way. You fail against the law because the law forces us to engineer things in such a way that there is no overarching field anywhere. Everything is local and constrained, because if there is this overarching field, we lose control of what's going on. We want computers to do exactly what we tell them to do in our programming. So no overarching fields everywhere. That's interference. It's undesirable. So I don't think that kind of methodology, which is essential for the entirety of computer engineering today, will ever deliver something akin to life, something akin to an entity that has private conscious in their life. It will always be an aggregation of parts that communicate only locally without any overarching framework. So yeah, but yeah, it's an opinion. I can't refute definitely that silicon computers are not ever going to be conscious.
Okay. So we can keep a chunk of Hollywood in business for some time.